Chapter 1. Echoes of a Lost Shore. There was a time this place shimmered, before the shadows crept in, before the air grew thick with rot and moss, before the frogs sang louder than the wind. They used to call it Crescent Bay, a curved slice of shoreline tucked into the woods where the lake lapped gently at the golden sand like a lazy dog at its master's feet. It was a paradise, especially in the summers of the 1930s, when people would come dressed in linen and laughter. Old grainy photos still show men in suspenders and women in wide-brimmed hats, children dancing in the shallows, and sunburnt smiles stretched wide under the sun. Every weekend, the shoreline would come alive. Tinny music floated from portable radios. Picnic baskets spilled out cold fried chicken and deviled eggs, and the smell of lake water and sunscreen tangled with the sweet scent of lilacs that grew wild at the edge of the dunes. A time when the world still felt wide open, simple, bright. But time is a strange undertow. No one remembers when the lake started shrinking. It didn't happen all at once. A few dry seasons, a few bad winters. The water pulled back slowly. Shy at first, then with more urgency, the beach grew wider, then muddier. What was once sand became silt, then sludge. Algae crept in. Frogs returned, louder than ever. The laughter vanished. The string lights fell. The breeze changed. Locals whispered that the land had been cursed, that something old beneath the lake had stirred and taken offense to the noise. The joy, the way humans carved smiles into its solitude. Others said it was just nature reclaiming what was always hers. But whatever the reason, Crescent Bay became Crescent Bog, and few dared to return. Now, the only sounds are the low drone of insects and the rhythmic thrum of bullfrogs echoing like ancient drums. Trees loom with gnarled limbs, roots sinking into the muck like claws. The old beach house is nothing but a skeleton, its once white frame devoured by vines and mildew, its roof sagging like tired shoulders beneath decades of neglect. The lake is darker now, still, as if holding its breath. They say the bottom has changed too, that what was once sand and stone is now something deeper, that when the sun hits the water just right, it glows green like something rotten trying to rise. And sometimes, when you stand too close, it feels like the lake is listening, waiting. It's not a place for swimming anymore, not for laughter, not for living, but it is alive. And the frogs, they never left. They sing at dusk and well into the night. Sometimes it sounds like a song, other times like a warning, but always, always they sing. And buried beneath that melody, if you listen close enough, you'll hear it, the croak beneath. Chapter 2. Where Beauty Drowns. The decay didn't stop with the shoreline. It spread, like a slow infection, into the woods, the sky, even the air itself. What was once vibrant now feels damp, gray, and heavy. The trees that ring the old lake lean forward as if straining to remember sunlight. Their bark is blistered, mottled with black moss. Branches tangle above like gnarled fingers trying to block out the sky. Even at noon, it feels like dusk. Every path back here is overgrown. The old hiking trails have been swallowed by briars and swamp reeds. Footsteps squish instead of crunch. The loamy earth smells of rot, and if you stay still long enough, you'll hear the quiet sound of bubbles rising somewhere out there in the reeds, as if the land is exhaling or burping something up. People don't come here anymore. They say the swamp swallowed their courage, that phones lose signal, compasses spin, that even the birds avoid it. But more than that, there's a feeling here, like being watched. Not from the trees or the sky or even the water, but beneath it all. A weight pressing up from the roots, something that wants to be known. Sometimes, on the rare occasion someone does wander in, campers, urban explorers, thrill seekers, they come back changed, eyes hollowed, skin clammy, their voices low. They speak of dreams full of frogs, hundreds of them, blinking, croaking, staring through the walls of their tents with glossy eyes, of waking to find mud on their feet and reeds in their hair, of losing time, hours, sometimes days. Some don't come back at all. It's said the swamp is growing not just in size, but in intent, creeping inch by inch toward the world that abandoned it, reaching out with moss-covered fingers, pulling everything clean and crisp into something softer, wetter, hungrier. And under that surface, hidden just below the green-black sheen of water, lives a thing, or maybe was a thing. Now it's more of a memory with teeth. They say it was born from the last real summer, when the last family packed up and drove away, leaving behind their forgotten cooler, their footprints in the sand. Something in the swamp awoke and found itself alone. It's been feeding ever since. Birds are the usual, small mammals. But sometimes, when the sky turns purple just before a storm, you can see something swirl the lily pads with deliberate hunger. Something large and fast. Old-timers called it the lake devil. Others say it's just a monstrous bass, swollen by years of eating frogs and filth. But those who've heard it feed swear it sounds like more, like a growl wrapped in water, a violent splash followed by silence, then nothing but the frogs again. Always the frogs. And the weirdest part, they never scatter when it strikes. They just pause, like they know, like they're waiting for what comes next. Chapter 3, Surface Predator. There's a saying in the towns around Crescent Bog, "Don't let your shadow touch the water." It sounds like superstition, just an old phrase passed between dock workers and kids riding rusted bikes past the cattails. But it comes from somewhere real, because people talk, quietly, cautiously, about something beneath that water. Not just big, not just mean, but aware. They say it feeds only at the surface, that it waits until the frogs begin their dusk chorus, then moves, silent, precise. It doesn't roll or boil the water like a normal fish. There's no swirl, no warning, just a pop, a sharp crack like a snapping branch, and whatever was there is gone, gone clean. It eats frogs, ducks, even a raccoon once, dragged under by the scruff in the blue dusk light. Its scream cut off mid-breath. A hunter's dog went missing years back, found later near the shallows, collar ripped and teeth marks deep and wide in its flank. They blamed coyotes, but coyotes don't drag things into lakes. The old men at the bait shop call it a bass, but their eyes shift when they say it, like they know it's not quite right to call it that anymore. Maybe it started as one. Maybe it is one, in the same way a man can lose his soul and still walk. Some say the thing grew too big, too smart, feeding year after year on frogs and birds and whatever else strayed close. That it learned patterns, learned timing. Some say it even waits until you look away before it strikes. Others think it's cursed, that whatever darkness seeped into the lake in the years after the beach was abandoned twisted it. Not just the land, but anything left in it. As if the swamp itself took offense at being forgotten and needed a vessel. Whatever the truth, no one's been able to catch it, not for lack of trying. Base masters, rogue guides, and backwoods legends have all taken their shot. Fancy boats, topwater rigs, frog patterns. Some even rigged up rats and live frogs with little hooks buried in their backs, but it doesn't take the bait. It knows. It only eats what it wants, when it wants. And lately, it's been getting bolder, closer to shore, closer to the old docks. Last week, a kayak was found capsized near the reeds, paddles still floating. No bite marks, no blood. Just a deep gouge in the hull, like something thick and hooked had struck from below. And then there's the eyes. 2 local kids swear they saw them at dawn, glowing faint under the lily pads. Big, wide set, like glass marbles. Watching, judging. Some folks think it's just stories, campfire tales to scare tourists away from the bog. But the locals lock their boats now. They don't night fish anymore, and nobody throws a frog lure out here without saying a quiet prayer first. Because if it's true, if something's still out there waiting, then the surface isn't safe. Not the frogs, not the birds, not even the shadows. Chapter 4. The pattern returns. Long before the swamp claimed Crescent Bay, before the sun stopped shining right and the frogs grew louder, there was a story passed among the older anglers. A whispered warning about a lure, a popper, something tied long ago, something the lake didn't forget. They called it the killer frog. Not because it caught bass, but because it woke one. It was an odd pattern even then. Bright chartreuse belly, striped back, bulging eyes painted wide like they'd seen something they shouldn't have. The original was tied in the late 40s by a reclusive fly tier named Ellis Drayton, who lived alone in a cabin near the bog's edge. They say he spent months perfecting it, not for tournaments, not for sport, but to silence the frogs. He believed the croaking wasn't natural, that it wasn't frogs at all, that something deep in the water mimicked them, mocked them, that at night the voices changed pitch, became rhythmic, almost ritualistic. Drayton swore the sound summoned something, so he tied the killer frog as bait, not to catch it, to lure it out, and he did. Neighbors reported gunshots echoing through the trees one night, followed by silence. The frogs went mute for 3 days straight. When someone finally checked his cabin, Drayton was gone. The only thing left was a muddy set of footprints leading from the lake to his porch, and the killer frog, still damp, resting in his vise. The pattern disappeared for decades after that, but like all good monsters, it didn't stay buried. A few copies floated around in old tackle boxes. A blurry photo ended up in a 1970s fly tying catalog, misattributed to a Florida bass guide. A YouTuber once claimed to find one in a vintage estate sale and filmed himself casting it in the bog. He hasn't posted since, but now, here, tonight, under the exact same stars, with the same fog crawling across the surface, the pattern is tied again, reimagined, repainted with careful hands. Its body marked with the same strange curves, its eyes a little too round, a little too knowing, and it's back in the water. The cast is smooth. The popper lands with a gentle plunk, floating perfectly, silent, waiting. The frogs stop, the cattails rustle, no wind, then comes the sound, that same low croak like the throat of the lake clearing itself. The water shifts, not like a fish, like a shape remembering how to move. This is what it wanted, not just food, not just a frog. This frog, a pattern born from fear, from obsession, from the one man who tried to fight the swamp and lost. And now the pattern returns, like a curse reborn, not to catch the beast, but to call it home. Chapter 5. The Final Croak. The line rests still. No wind, no birds, just the popper sitting in the black water like an eye waiting to blink. Then, the frogs stop. Not fade, not quiet. They just stop. The silence is sharp, unnatural, like the whole swamp just leaned in to listen. And then, it hits. A thunder crack of water and teeth. The popper vanishes in a blink, the rod bends hard, and the air fills with a wet growl that isn't from any fish. The surface thrashes, mud and moss churn. The line cuts sideways through the reeds with impossible speed. And then, nothing, just ripples. The popper's gone. The frogs return, but their croak sounds different now, almost like they're laughing. Huge thanks to Trident Fly Fishing for the awesome popper kit. This story wouldn't exist without it. If you enjoyed the tie and the tail, be sure to like, subscribe, and keep your line tight. Until next time, I'm Wil Dride.